Bekkem Kritza, four-star quarterback, according to Rivals, in the class of 2025, commits to the Nittany Lions. This is really good news for Penn State because it means that commits, high school prospects aren't afraid to, especially on the offensive side. Defensive side is, of course, a different story because you have everyone on the staff intact. Most of these kids, most of these prospects commit to their coordinator, commit to their position coach because they're working with them almost 24/7. James Franklin and the Institute of Penn State are one thing, but defensive linemen are committing to work with Dion Barnes. The linebackers committing to work with Manny Diaz. In the secondary, Anthony Poindexter, Terry Smith, right? You get my point. So Penn State firing its offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach in Mike Yurcich, it was something just to at least watch, analyze how would this unfold. There were the rumors of this, a lot of recruiting experts who do a great job across all the networks. So whether it's Rivals 24/7 on 3, were indicating that, hey, they felt really good about Bekkem Kritza still committing to Penn State, despite immediately what happened. Kritza announced that he was going to have a decision made. He visited for the Penn State-Michigan game. Mike Yurcich was fired on Sunday, and Kritza said, hey, I'm going to commit on Tuesday, and it ultimately came down to the Nittany Lions as his decision. But people want to know about Kritza, not ultimately, why he chose Penn State is a good thing. That means that James Franklin is still one of the best recruiters in the country. Danny O'Brien probably had a lot of influence in this, and it's important to keep him around, right? Maybe you give him I'm not saying an offensive coordinator spot, but as a guy who's going to have a little more influence on the quarterbacks for the remainder of the season, maybe you have an offensive coordinator and then separately the quarterbacks coach and Danny O'Brien. I'm not necessarily advocating for that, but the staff really anchored down despite the adversity, and they're able to land a very respectable commit. And I don't think Penn State's done recruiting quarterbacks. Ryan Montgomery and Malik Washington are two players that we've talked about extensively with Brian Smith of the Locked On Podcast Network as the recruiting analyst. Those guys are still the primary targets. I wouldn't be surprised if Penn State gets 2 quarterbacks in this class. But let's learn about Bekkem Kritza. 6'5", pro style type of quarterback with the size, right? This isn't 5'10", 5'11", under 6 foot. This is a 6'5", 180-pound prospect. So he's definitely a redshirt candidate. You want him to, now he's still a junior, right? You're getting a junior to commit as early as he is. So maybe he can put on 20 more pounds and bulk up to 6'5", 200 pounds. Because I think ultimately at the end of the day, Kritza, if he wants to play at the college football level, will ultimately have to weigh about 220, 230. I don't think he'll bulk up to Drew Aller's size. I think 6'5". It depends on how he handles the weight. Penn State's not going to make a player add unnecessary weight just to say, well, he has it. He picked it up in the weight room. He's been eating more. They don't do that. But I think an ideal to maximize his frame is 6'5", 220, because he is mobile. I wouldn't exactly describe him as a dual threat, but he can move. He certainly can move, even at that 6'5" height. Now, he's had an interesting high school career. For Kritza, he's a 3-star according to some sites. Rivals really likes him at that 4-star rating, because as a freshman at Fairview, Colorado, 20 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, and led a winning squad, but then took a chance, bet on himself, and transferred to one of the biggest powerhouses in all of the United States, Miami Central. He transferred down into Florida, in the state of Florida, and didn't really find a niche. Didn't really work out at Miami Central, and was a backup the entire time. Never saw the field, and then transfers back to Fairview, where he's from, and now he's got to get cleared and everything. But he is playing once again. But he had to wait a few weeks before he could actually step on the field, since there's transfer rules in the state of Colorado. Those are their state-specific rules about transferring. But he's a junior. He's a two-sport athlete, which I highly encourage. I know that Penn State likes that as well. They like players who are playing multiple sports. He's a football and a basketball player. He averages double digits when he plays basketball. He's a raw prospect, but he's a talented prospect. Somebody that's definitely going to need developing. So he's certainly a redshirt candidate. He's not someone that's going to light it up the second he gets on campus. I think that Penn State is probably going to encourage him to enroll early as well, to start that clock, to start that development a little early. But I think the best case scenario out of all of this, not only do you get a quarterback commit, despite firing your offensive coordinator and your quarterback's coach, who Bekkem Kritza was probably somewhat close with. He was starting to build a relationship, and still felt comfortable enough to make the decision to commit to Penn State with all this turbulence going on. I think that's the most important takeaway out of all of this. So Penn State gets another addition to the class of 2025, its first quarterback commit, but keep an eye on the offensive coordinator. I don't think Penn State is done trying to get a second quarterback because Malik Washington and Ryan Montgomery are too good to pass up just because. And Penn State ideally would like to take two quarterbacks. Drew Aller, Bo Perbula are going to you see these other programs, the championship winning programs, they have quarterback after quarterback after quarterback. Georgia has how many high profile guys waiting? They don't care that they have 5 or 6 players that could start anywhere else. Penn State is trying to do the same thing. Now it's a matter of keeping them around in the age of the transfer portal and NIL, but you factor that in. You factor in that some guys are hypothetically eventually going to transfer. You don't want that to happen. You would like to have the depth chart intact, but it's a realistic, distinct possibility, which is why you want to go after multiple quarterbacks in these recruiting cycles. And that is Penn State's goal at the end of the day to add in addition to Bekkem Kritza.